Hey, what's going on, gang? This is Nate on the Stone, and welcome to the 23rd episode of The Rolling Stone, which is, as you know, where I give my initial thoughts, opinions, analyses on stories that are currently making their way through the news cycle. And we're starting off this video in Toronto, Canada, okay? FYI, this is going to be a little bit of an international episode of The Rolling Stone. We're starting off in Toronto, Canada, because Toronto, Canada actually celebrated kind of a big pop cultural moment, the opening of its very first Chick-Fil-A restaurant, which was actually which should have been actually good news for everyone involved, since this was the first Chick-fil-A restaurant in Toronto, Canada, which is good news for everyone who likes, chicken sandwiches. If you're going to have fast food, if you just need fast food, then Chick-fil-A is probably one of the restaurants you should go to, just because the service and the food are notches above most others. And it was a big moment for Chick-fil-A because this was actually its first international location, the first time that the restaurant has actually expanded across the boundaries of the US. So it was a win-win situation, right? Everyone should have been happy, except of course in this day and age, not everyone can be happy. And would you know that the grand opening of Toronto's Chick-fil-A was met with protests, vehement protests. And we actually have a clip here to show you kind of what was going on at the grand opening of Toronto's Chick-fil-A. Here it is.
It's a Turkish shop. Get lost.
It's chicken sandwiches. It's chicken sandwiches.
Exactly.
It's chicken sandwiches.
Because you're a heterosexual cisgendered male. That's why it's only chicken.
Homophobes off our streets!
Crazy, right? Over chicken sandwiches. And that's not even it. Later on, the protesters actually conducted a die-in. Okay, I'm not kidding, gang. A die-in at the Chick-fil-A restaurant. Here it is. Here's a clip. I just love the look of the people going into the restaurant. They're like, what the hell are you people doing? It kind of reminds me, honestly, of that scene from the 2016 movie The Nice Guys with Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. If you've seen that movie, then you know what I'm talking about, the protest scene. But anyway, why were these protests happening? Why were these protesters there? Well, because, don't you know, Chick-fil-A is a nucleus of homophobia. I'm not kidding. That was the official explanation as to why these protests were taking place. So, Yahoo News, okay? When Yahoo News wrote up its story about the grand opening and these protests, this is what Yahoo News said, quote, "The fast food company," that's Chick-fil-A, "has a long history of donating to anti-gay organizations, with its charitable network giving millions to conversion therapy. They've even funded groups that believe being gay should be recriminalized, including the Family Research Foundation and the Alliance Defending Freedom," unquote. And also, of course, this stems from the innate bigotry of the owners of Chick-fil-A, the Cathy family, who, when the gay marriage debate was raging here in the U.S., before the Obergefell decision in 2015, which legalized that all across the USA, the Cathy family actually took a stand and said, we are a Christian family, and therefore we actually believe in the biblical definition of marriage. You need one man, one woman to make a marriage, okay? So that is where the nucleus of all this comes from. The Cathy family is Christian, and they made homophobic comments, and therefore the entire company is homophobic and hateful because they give money to, for example, the Family Research, let's see here, the Family Research Foundation and the Alliance Defending Freedom, as well as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, which is another group that they give money to. But it even goes further than that, because it's not just Chick-fil-A, which is a bastion of hate and bigotry. Every single person that goes to Chick-fil-A and orders a chicken sandwich or a chicken salad or, Chick-fil-A nuggets, whatever. Whoever goes there only goes there because they are a homophobic, hateful bigot who actually want gay people to be repressed and erased from existence. And that is not an exaggeration. In the Toronto Star, a guy by the name of Andrew Wheeler wrote an editorial in which he said that Chick-fil-A is, quote-unquote, ideologically opposed to people like him because he identifies as being part of the LGBTQ2 community. Now, that's his acronym, LGBTQ2, not LGBTQIA2+, which seems to me that he's, cutting off a lot of people, which I would think would be hateful and bigoted, but that's an aside, that's neither here nor there. He makes this argument that everyone who goes to Chick-fil-A is a hateful bigot because if you go there willingly knowing that Chick-fil-A is a homophobic bastion of hate, then you are willingly giving your money to an organization that's going to turn around and use that money to basically, actively, he says, hurt gay kids. This is what he says. I'm going to quote a little piece from his editorial verbatim. Okay, Andrew Wheeler, the Toronto Star, quote, "Of course, people are not just going to Chick-fil-A to eat fried chicken. They're eating fried chicken spitefully. They're defiantly standing in line with all the other free thinkers because they've been asked not to. They know that going to Chick-fil-A hurts queer people, but they've never thought much about queer people before, and they're not going to start now. It's a strange form of identity politics where the identity is a-hole. The line to get into Chick-fil-A is the a-hole pride parade," unquote. Okay, this is just a bunch of hooey. First and foremost, it is absolutely true that the Cathy family made that statement. They said, look, we're a Christian family, which means we're ostensibly supposed to believe what the Bible says. The Bible says this about marriage, therefore we're going to believe it. But has a Chick-fil-A actually started a culture kampf within its organization against all of its managers and employees, who might identify as part of the LGBTQIA2+ community? Do they actually have people who come into their restaurants to make an order? Do they have them, fill out a survey, saying, what is your sexual orientation? Do you believe in the Bible? Have you accepted Jesus Christ? Because if you answer no to any of these questions, you know what? The trap door is going to open up beneath your feet and you're going to burn in the sulfire pit of hell. Has Chick-fil-A done that? No. Or at least if they have, no one has reported on it, which makes me think that it's not happening, because if there was even a whiff of that going on, people would have been on it faster than a jackrabbit on a date, okay? Now, are any of these organizations that Chick-fil-A gives money to, are they homophobic? No. Let's take them one by one here real quickly. The Family Research Council. It's a Christian organization that believes in the biblical definition of marriage and that promotes that idea in society, right? So they are simply using their freedom of speech, their freedom of religion to advocate for what they believe in. Much like how advocates of gay marriage, advocated for their idea and what they believed in. Okay, so it seems to be, pretty equal. They haven't said anything about the ontological worth of people who identify as part of the LGBTQIA2+ community. They've just said, hey, we're a Christian organization. This is what we believe to be the essence of marriage. This is what you have to have for there to be an actual marriage. You can agree or disagree, but you can't call that hateful, not if you're being honest, unless, of course, your sum total of who you are as a person resides in your sexual orientation and your sexual identity, which is another topic completely. The Alliance Defending Freedom, okay? Another red herring. Yes, it is another Christian organization, but it is also a legal body, right? They defend people. They defend people's First Amendment rights, particularly freedom of speech and freedom of religion. One prominent case that they defended just recently was Jack Phillips, the Colorado baker. Case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Alliance Defending Freedom represented Jack Phillips all the way to the Supreme Court, defending his freedom of religion, okay? So they are a Christian organization, but they are in the business of actually defending people's inalienable rights. Like, everyone should be able to agree that's a good thing. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes, it's another Christian organization that promotes the biblical idea of marriage, and it also says, you know, we believe that this is what makes marriage, a man and a woman. We believe that sex should be only be had in the confines of that marriage. And so we ask all of our participants, all of our athletes, to actually hold true to that. So that means, right, no homosexual activity, but also no sex at all. You know, even if you're straight, if you're not married, you know what? If you're not married and you're straight, please do not have sex, because that contradicts our principles. And of course, if you are married, you know, no having sex with people who isn't your spouse, because, you know, that should be generally frowned upon at all. Okay, so all of these things, the Cathy family, the organizations that Chick-fil-A donates to, it's not homophobic. It's not homophobic at all, which leads to a very interesting conclusion. These protests, directed against Toronto's very first Chick-fil-A, it's not about homophobia, because as we just went through, neither Chick-fil-A nor any of the organizations that it gives money to are homophobic. The only way that you can say that Chick-fil-A or these organizations are homophobic is if you redefine homophobia to fit these organizations and what they believe. And what that tells me is that systematic homophobia is so rare and so fossilized that you have to actually revamp the word, remake the word, in order to accommodate these, innocuous examples that you give, okay? So that's the first thing that it shows. But more importantly, this isn't about fighting homophobia. This is about scouring the land of Christianity, okay? And that's not an exaggeration. That is not hyperbole. This is about removing Christianity from the public sphere, okay? Removing it from the public domain, from the public square. Removing it so that it has no voice. It is kept. It is trapped. It is confined within the four walls of your home and within the four walls of your church or synagogue, on Saturday or Sundays. So, if it's not in your house, if it's not in your religious organization, don't you dare spread it around in the public sphere. Don't you even express beliefs that partially or completely stem from your religion in the public sphere, because there is no place for it here and we don't want it here. Now, why would they be doing that? Well, this is going to sound hyperbolic, and I freely admit that, but it's the truth. Progressivism and the left has come to the point where it is actively waging a holy war against orthodox religions, okay? And the people who hold on to those orthodox religions, okay? They are engaged in a holy war with those religions. They firmly believe that Orthodox Christianity, Orthodox Judaism, and even Orthodox non-fundamentalist, Islam, the kind of Islam that actually believes in an objective moral order, but which doesn't advocate, women being stoned to death, or, people being pushed off of buildings or burned, or in subjugating everyone to Sharia law, the sort of Islam that people like the Imam of Peace on Twitter defends and pushes for. All of those things the postmodern left believes are unequivocally, objectively wrong. Okay? To the left, those religions are the enemy, and they must be crushed. They must be defeated. And all of the people who actually hold on to those beliefs, they have to be crushed, they have to be defeated, they have to be silenced as well. But there's something else going on here too. Modern progressivism really knows that it can't hold a candle to those actual religions, because if you actually revitalized those religions, if you actually breathed life into them again, gave them their ancient power, I mean, think about it like this. When Christianity first appeared in the world, within the span of 300 years, it had really stamped out paganism in the Roman Empire. Now, 300 years sounds like a long time, but think about it again. Christianity has existed now for almost 2,000 years. So really, 300 years in a 2,000-year history, that's nothing. That's practically, just an afternoon's work compared to the general timeline that Christianity is working under. That shows power. That shows conviction. That shows, just really almost a miraculous work. And the left realizes that. Remember, they're not idiots, all right? They might be devious, they might be unscrupulous, but they're not idiots. They know about the ancient power that these Orthodox religions have, and they know that if those powers were actually awakened, they would be in for some serious competition. But they can't have that. They can't have that competition because they know that if those ancient religions actually revitalize their ancient power, then they wouldn't be able to have a candle. They wouldn't be able to hold a candle to those things. It'd be like choosing between, a piece of crusty bread with peanut butter on it or a 3-course meal. Which one are you going to choose? They know it, and they know that that's what most people would choose given the choice, okay? And so, and they also just know that any sort of religion, besides their own religion, because leftism itself is becoming a cult, it's a distraction against the coming of utopia. They're creating utopia on the world. Religion, again, the opiate of the people, as Marx called it, unless, of course, it's your religion to further your ideology. So any religion that's not part of leftism is a distraction to people, a distraction from their ideology. That's another reason why they are against it. So, the long and the short of it is that, however innocuous, no expression of religion besides the religion of leftism can be permitted in the public square because, to the left, it's just objectively wrong and it needs to be crushed because anything that is not of itself is opposed to it and is its enemy. And second, it distracts people from the coming of utopia. And third, it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous to have, because there's always the chance that it's going to revitalize and just cause a hell of a lot of damage to the left and for their plans of utopia. That is what this protest of Chick-fil-A was about. It was about scouring Toronto, scouring the public square from any sort of religious expression, any sort of hint of religious expression, no matter how innocuous. And in order to do that, because if they actually openly came out and said that, they wouldn't be taken seriously. They would be laughed out of existence, or people wouldn't take them seriously. So they have to wrap it in standing up against homophobia and hate. That is why they're doing it like that. But that is story number one. Our second story takes us to London. I told you that this was going to be kind of an international video of the Rolling Stone. Second story takes us to London and to Sea Life London, an aquarium in London. And Sea Life London just announced that they were going to be raising the world's very first gender-neutral penguin chick. And there will be much rejoicing, as, Monty Python would say. Serious. The world's very first gender-neutral penguin chick. So, this penguin chick in question has been raised by a quote-unquote lesbian pair of penguins. Apparently, the mother, this penguin mother, gave birth to 2 eggs, and to spare her the work and the trouble of taking care of 2 chicks, like she would have to do in the wild, the zoo, the Sea Life London, gave this the second egg to this quote-unquote lesbian pair of penguins to raise, okay, to elevate the birth mother. Okay, and now, according to CNN, who ran this story, okay, according to CNN, quote, experts at the aquarium usually give newborn penguins gender-based names, but in this case, decided it was more natural for the chick to grow and develop into a mature adult as genderless, which is normal in the wild until they mature, unquote. And the chick has been fitted with a purple tag on its wing so that it can be identified. Now, one of the workers at the aquarium, a gal by the name of Charlotte Barkus, she was actually interviewed because apparently, I mean, this story, I mean, is so out of this world bonkers that, you know, they decided to give it, you know, its own segment of the news. And you can see that even the news people, the anchorheads are like, what? Genderless penguins? What? Now, the worker, Charlotte Barkus, she says that the whole point of this is basically a social experiment to show people that there's a difference between sex and gender and to free chicks from having gender roles assigned to them by visitors. Now, that is no joke. We've got a clip of that too. So here is Charlotte Barkus, an aquarist at Sea Life London, explaining why the aquarium actually did this. Here's the clip.
What we wanted to do was to take the opportunity to raise the whole conversation with guests who come through to the aquarium, just to raise that exact point, that there is a difference between gender and sex. And in terms of the way that we manage the colony at the aquarium, we wouldn't manage them differently based on whether they are females or males. What we wanted to do with this chick was give guests an opportunity to meet that individual and learn about its personality without assigning it any sort of preconceived sort of gender roles like we would if we were to.
So when you say that it is common for Gen 2 penguin chicks to be genderless, what exactly do you mean by that? Are you saying that there are no kind of sex-specific or gender-specific behaviours in Gen 2 penguins?
It's a really sort of difficult subject to navigate specifically. You will get small differences in terms of behaviour based on whether they are male or female.
I mean, it's not like boy penguins are playing football and girl penguins are doing the knitting or something like that.
Yeah, because it's interesting when you say assign gender roles. What gender roles can you assign to a penguin?
Exactly, and I think that's the key thing. You don't really see it in the animal kingdom. There is a little bit of conversation going on at the moment in terms of whether we might be seeing gender roles in some higher primates, much like we're often compared to other higher primates because we're so similar. But with penguins, there's a difference between sex differences and with gender roles. Penguins would have to have some sort of society where other penguins were potentially putting pressure on little baby penguins that they should be more masculine or more feminine and things like that. So what we wanted to do was give guests that opportunity to not be putting those assumptions onto a little Gen 2 chick.
Oh, boy howdy. Okay, first of all, these have to be just some smart penguins, okay? If visitors can actually put social pressure on these penguins to choose one set of gender roles over another, if visitors can actually pressure penguins into choosing gender roles for themselves, I mean, these must just be super smart penguins to be able to have that amount of social awareness. These must not be normal penguins. I mean, they must be descended from the penguins that raised Danny DeVito in the sewers of Gotham in Batman Returns, and which at the end of that movie strapped on red and white candy cane striped missiles on their backs to destroy Gotham, right? I mean, that's the only explanation I can think of if these penguins actually are reacting to social pressure from visitors. That's the only explanation I can think of, which makes me think that the aquarium should actually display them more prominently. I mean, you have Gotham City penguins here. I mean, you've got to watch out. They could take over the world. Make sure that no short, squat men with long noses and a penchant for top hats and umbrellas and who like to eat raw fish and bite the noses noses off of people and who also like to touch up pretty young girls, make sure that none of those kinds of guys, get close to these penguins. Otherwise, London might have a bigger problem than the knife crime epidemic that is happening right now. Okay? But second of all, the idea that gender roles don't exist in nature, that's a lot of hooey. Again, for example, male emperor penguins, they're the ones who take care of the eggs after their mates lay said eggs, okay? The females go off and they eat and frolic and basically have a couple of months just to enjoy themselves and try not to get eaten. And the poor dads, they're out there in the freezing cold, right? Sub-zero temperatures, balancing these eggs on their feet so that they don't freeze. In the lion prides, it's the females who do all the hunting. The male lions, they don't do any of the hunting. All right, male cardinals, for example, they are the ones who are supposed to draw predators away from their mates and from their nests. That's why male cardinals have the bright red plumage and the females have the more muted brown and red color so that they can hide better. The males are bright and scarlet, not just to show off to the girls they mate, but so that they can, be the proverbial lunch to a predator, so that the girl, the people who act, the species, the part of the species that can actually get pregnant and lay eggs, she survives, not only so that she can take care of the chicks when they hatch, but so that she can mate again and have more chicks. So the male is kind of like, okay, for the good of the species, I'm going to come and become an hors d'oeuvre to a bobcat or something. So gender roles, quote unquote, totally exist in nature. Okay? So really, what's going on here? If there are gender roles in nature, and if visitors really can't pressure these penguin chicks into choosing one set of gender roles over another, and would the common visitor to an aquarium even know what, a male penguin is supposed to do compared to a female penguin? And would they know if, those roles differ from species to species of penguins, because there's not just one monolithic group of animals called penguins. They are divided into species again. What is going on here? Well, what's going on is that ideologues are trying to buttress their ideology with nature. It's no longer enough just to reshape human nature and human society compared to what they want. Now they are actively trying to reshape reality outside of humanity in order to buttress their ideology. And it's sort of circular reasoning here. So for example, they've said, being genderless, being one of these 100 different genders besides male and female, that's good, that's okay, that's normal. Now, however, if you can say, hey, this is also what happens in nature. Look at the penguins, which are also naturally genderless. Then they can use that, we found this in nature, to buttress their original point. Because, hey, if you can find something in nature, if you find it in nature, then it's automatically good. We have this very weird relationship with the word and the idea of natural. David Berlinski, in an interview way back in 2009, between 2009 and 2011, I believe. I forget exactly what year, but Dr. David Berlinski made this point. He said that the word natural is very spongy because everyone seems to gravitate towards the idea that if something is natural, it's good. But when actually pinned down and asked, what does the word mean? What does the word natural mean? We get very flaky. It's like St. Augustine said about the wind. I know what it is, or what he said about time. I know what it is until you ask me. That's kind of what the word natural is. But even that has its problems. Even arguing that since we find something in nature, then it's automatically good. That has problems too. For example, I just mentioned that in lion prides, it's the females who do all the hunting. The females do all the work, they do all the hunting, but who gets to eat first? It's the male lion. It's the male lions, and then the cubs, and then the females get to eat. So does that mean that women should do all the work and men should just be able to laze around all day. Is that what that means? Male crocodiles are known for eating baby crocodiles, and more than that, for eating their own offspring, which is why the female crocodile has to kind of stick around the nest until the babies get into the river to thwart off all the males, because the males, including the father, are not above looking at newly hatched crocs and saying, ooh, lunchtime. Or think about it like this. Female praying mantises, female black widows, have a very bad habit of eating their mates after, making sure that the species continues along its merry way. Should that be all right? Should, after two people do the devil's tango, if for whatever reason the woman is just like, no, I don't think that this is going to work, is she justified in killing the guy, to spare his feelings, from dumping him? Or here's one. Coyotes, geese, and bald eagles, they actually mate for life, which means there is no fault divorce for them. Should we imitate that? Would the left be all on board for that? Because, hey, it's in nature, so obviously it must be good. Would the left be okay with that? I have a funny suspicion that it wouldn't. So, all of this, what I've said, the idea that penguin chicks are naturally genderless and they are trying to use nature in order to support their own preconceived ideas about sex and gender, this shows what I am going to call a demigod mentality. Okay? The left has reached a point in the US and in the West in general. The left has reached a point where it honestly, genuinely, truly, honest to God thinks that they can actually reshape nature, human society based on that nature, and now nature in general. They can reshape reality through the equivalent of reciting a magic spell, performing a magic ritual, which today is writing a bunch of academic journals, then doing a lot of interviews on radios and podcasts, talking about the ideas in those academic journals, getting blogs to write about them, and spreading those ideas so that everyone says, well, of course it's just like that. That is the modern equivalent of saying a magic spell, conducting a magical ritual in order to change reality, because at the core idea of magic, as Richard Cavendish has said, the core idea of magic is that the magician replaces God. In usual theology, God is at the center of the cosmos. God is the center from which everything else comes into being. Well, in magical theory, it's the magician who takes the place of God with his knowledge, with his ability to perform magic. He is actually able to change reality. Reality now stems from him and what he wants. That is what's happening. That is why I'm calling this the demigod mentality. And that is a very dangerous mentality for people to have, because we can laugh at it. We can say, oh, I mean, gosh, genderless penguins. Yeah, right. We've heard about that before. That's a new one. That's a good one. And we can have a good, belly laugh, and then move along our day. But it's no laughing matter, because the demigod mentality is nothing to laugh at. And I'll give you an example. If you were walking down the street and you met someone who came up and said, I am Zeus, worship me, mortal, you might kind of laugh, might play along with him just to get away, give him, $8 as a suitable sacrifice to Zeus, so Zeus can go over and get a hamburger at Five Guys, because you don't want to skimp out on the gods or something. And then you're going to go off along your day, have a laugh about it, tweet about it, talk to your friends about it, do an Instagram story about it, and then forget about it. One guy, not really that much to think about. Not really much to get afraid over, not to get nervous about. Now think about 100 people coming down upon you, armed with pitchforks, torches, shotguns, pistols, machetes, Molotov cocktails, and saying, We're the Olympian gods. Do what we say. All of a sudden, you're going to take them a little bit more seriously. You're going to take them a little bit more seriously because you remember what the gods did to people when, the gods were displeased with people. To give you just one example, there is the story of the hunter, Actaeon, who was out hunting with his dogs one day, and he comes upon the goddess Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and she's bathing in her pool. It was her favorite pool to bathe in, and which of course means she's naked. And Actaeon, being a warm-blooded Greek male, seeing a naked body, probably female, but it could have been male too, since he's Greek. He stops for a better look, and Artemis, without any sort of explanation, like mortal, I am a goddess, give me some privacy. Without anything like that, she instantly turns Actaeon into a stag, causes his dogs to go mad, so that his dogs run him down as a stag, and they tear him apart and eat him. Moral of the story is, if you make the gods angry, they're just going to destroy your life and probably have a good laugh about it later on. And that's what the left is now today, because we might say, well, what's the comparison with that today? Well, what is cancel culture? Okay, which I have also said is best described as political and social excommunication. Then the modern equivalent of that story, Actaeon made Artemis angry. She instantly excommunicated him from human society by turning him into an animal, and then by having his own dogs kill him. Well, today with cancel culture, political and social excommunication, what is that but turning people into animals, saying that since you disagree with the tenets of leftism and modern progressivism, you are subhuman. You have no place in human society, whether that's politics or whether that's even just polite society in general. You have no place here with us. Be gone into the outer rim of the darkness, where there will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. And that's the dangerous part about this demigod mentality. When you actually have a swath of people who have taken over the culture, who believe that they can actually control and rework nature into their own image, you are asking for trouble. If you're religious, you automatically understand this because you think, hey, that's God's prerogative. Bad things happen when people think that they can do that. That whole Tower of Babel story still holds weight today. But even if you're a secularist, even if you are a non-religious or an atheist or an agnostic, you can see the dangers of this. First, because this mob, basically, is, assuming for itself divine powers which don't exist, which should make you mad right off the bat. But second of all, because, like I said, because they are assuming this power for themselves, they are basically saying, we control reality, which means that they are going to control your life. If they don't actually change your way of thinking just through osmosis and just through the continual erosion of being in the reality and in the culture that they have formed, then they are going to exert, if that doesn't happen, then they are going to exert more direct pressure and cancel you, excommunicate you, turn you into a stag and have your own dogs hunt you down if you don't agree with them. So that's what this story shows. The genderless penguin chicks at Life Aquarium really shows the demigod mentality of the left. And this has been building for a while. We kind of laughed. The left was over here building the modern equivalent of Mount Olympus, and everyone kind of laughed and said, people are too smart. They're not going to fall for this. Everything's okay, guys. And all of a sudden, Mount Olympus, is practically completely built, and the left is hurling thunderbolts right and left at whoever displeases them, and all of a sudden we're running around like chicks without heads because we just happened to commit the sin of buying a chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. So anyway, that is story number 2. And our final story for this video of the Rolling Stone takes us to Sweden, because a Swedish professor this past week actually made the case that to combat climate change, people are going to have to become cannibals. Okay, I'm not making this up, guys. This comes from PJ Media. Okay, Professor Magnus Soderlund, professor of marketing and strategy at the Stockholm School of Economics, spoke at the Gastro Summit, a discussion on the future of food in the case of a climate apocalypse. And Soderlund spoke on the topic, can you imagine eating human flesh? This again, I'm quoting here from PJ Media. He argued for breaking down the ancient taboos against desecrating the human corpse and cannibalism. Okay, according to the Epoch Times, Soderlund dismissed taboos against cannibalism as conservative. He suggested that people's resistance to eating human flesh could be overcome little by little, beginning with persuading people to just taste it. In the video, he warned that since food sources will be scarce in the future, people must be introduced to eating things they have thus far considered disgusting, among them human flesh. This is a perfect capstone to our last story, where we were talking about the demigod mentality in regards to genderless penguin chicks. Because when you think about it, when you break it down, okay? Well, first of all, why has cannibalism always been considered taboo? I'm sure that there are academic theories about it. I would say that it's because man is often defined as a rational animal, but you could define man just as easily as a religious animal. Because there is an innate urge in mankind, in the human person. There is a magnetism that is drawing him to something greater than himself, outside of himself. That's why atheistic societies don't really exist. And when they do, like in the USSR and other communist regimes, it is artificially created. It's created through persecution and terror. And I would argue that because of that religious instinct that we all innately have, we also innately recognize that there is something unique about humanity. There is something unique in the human person. The fact that we have free will and that we have rationality, we can actually think and ponder and reflect, separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Right? We innately know this, whether we choose to act on that intrinsic knowledge or not. And so when we see another human being, not only do we see another example of that, if you will, that divine spark that gives us those things, but we also see a reflection of ourselves. It's like looking in a mirror. It's like, I stand apart. My ability to laugh, to think, to choose, it separates me from my dog, my cat, my goldfish, the blue jays that are bullying the sparrows outside, trying to eat the birdseed that I put out for them. That separates me from all of those animals, however much, I love them. And I recognize that, again, in another human being. I recognize that ability in another human person. And so it's like a mirror. And that's why cannibalism, for most of human history and most parts of the world, has been considered taboo. Because it's like, no, you don't do this to another human person, because there was something different about him when he was alive. And so you do not desecrate the body of the dead in honor of what they used to be and what they did. Okay, that's why cannibalism has, I would argue, that's why cannibalism, a big reason why cannibalism has been seen as a taboo throughout most of human history, throughout most of the world. Well, but now, what is the goal of the left? What is the goal of progressivism? I would say that at its root, at its core, it's the desire to create utopia on Earth. That's what it is. But in order to do that, because we haven't had a great deal of luck in that category, have we? I think that a lot of people on the left have decided that the only way that they're going to do that is if they actually change human nature, which they aren't shy about doing. All this talk about 100 different genders and, restarting polygamy and attacking monogamy and, all of these different theories about the human person and the family and the human society that they have, this is all part and parcel of it. They think that they can change human nature. They think that they can free human nature, and that by making it something other than it has been, and that is actually going to open the doors for utopia. But in order to do that, like I just said, you have to change human nature. You have to change human nature. You have to change what people like, what they don't like, even if that goes against the very core of their being. Because I have a suspicion that at least some people on the left, like this professor Soderlund, he thinks that mankind will not naturally go into utopia. Mankind is incapable of actually having utopia. So in order to have utopia, you have to turn man into something different. You have to turn him into, for example, the new Soviet man. The Soviets tried to turn their people into the new Soviet man because that was the only way that the Soviet Empire was actually going to not just survive, but to thrive and prosper. Regular humans couldn't do it. You had to turn into the new Soviet man. The Nazis did the exact same thing with their idea of the Aryan race as the pure race. So this isn't, new, changing human nature in order to achieve your goal. And this actually is it. This actually is it. And remember where I said in my last story that the demigod mentality will force itself upon you one way or the other. The demigod mentality will make you change, or else it will destroy you. This is it. This is the end result of the demigod mentality. Making people become cannibals. That is the end goal of the demigod mentality. You can't go any more than that. Taking a nigh-near universal taboo of the human race, cannibalism, and turning it not just into something to tolerate, but to an abject good, something that's going to be necessary in order to survive and to thrive in the case of a climate apocalypse. That is what the demigod mentality is all about. The Olympians, like this Professor Soderlund, showing that no. Thousands and thousands of years of this belief, it's quote-unquote conservative. With one word, he is able to banish it into the dustbin of history with that dirty word, conservative. And the really good thing is cannibalism. Charlton Heston in Soylent Green famously at the end said, Soylent Green is people. Well, these people are actually saying, yes, Soylent Green is people, and that's a good thing. And if you don't agree with it, you're a conservative. And if you're a conservative, that means you are an enemy, which means that the Olympians will blast you with a bolt of lightning. So that's what that story shows. And as usual, I have talked for way too long, so I am wrapping up the video right here with that story. So happy Friday, gang. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you all on Tuesday. Ciao.